Hello, welcome back to the Talkoffamepod Podcast with Kylie and on today's episode, we're welcoming host and producer of the Yankees Podcast, Mike Scudiero. We will talk about his podcast, the Yankees, what his future in radio looks like, and much more. Thank you so much for coming on, Mike. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me, Kylie. I appreciate it.
Of course. So for the last 4 years, you have been doing a podcast called Yapping Yankees, where you talk about all about the Yankees and sports and so much more. Like, how did your love for the New York Yankees make you want to talk about their season and their team on a podcast in general?
Well, I actually started talking about them and all the major sports really on a couple of sports talk shows I had in college. And I figured that when I was graduating college and I had to stop those shows once I was done because I was the assistant manager of the station there and a sports talk show host there in my 4 years in school, that I wanted to keep content going. And what better piece of content to do than the team that I'm most passionate about in the whole world, the Yankees. I do follow all the four sports, not nearly as much as baseball with the
Mhm.
others, but when you love the Yankees as much as I do, it makes it really easy to talk about on a weekly basis, even a daily basis if you want. But Yapping Yankees is weekly. But um, it was just a really easy decision when you're talking about something you love, you could talk about it for hours, even if you're
Mhm.
talking about it all by yourself, like I do on Yapping Yankees, because it's just me and the listener on
Mhm.
Yapping Yankees. So when you love something as much as I love the Yankees these last 15 years of my life, it makes it really easy to do on a weekly basis, daily basis, doesn't matter. And you can go for an hour, 2 hours. So when you love something that much and you want to keep content going, if you happen to go to school for broadcasting like I did, and you just want to keep the ball rolling with your own content and just staying fresh with your broadcasting skills, then starting a podcast is really the fantastic area to go to, and you're best suited to pick something that you love the most. And for me, it's the Yankees. So it was a really easy decision, honestly.
Like you're actually right because like for me, like if I had a chance to talk about baseball or even the Dodgers, I'll be doing it for hours daily. Like if I have an excuse to talk about baseball, the Dodgers, or any sports in general, I would definitely take the advantage and do it. Because like if I do that, like each episode, I'll be talking for hours each day. It wouldn't stop.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter if you're alone too. Everyone was like, "Well, how do you go on for like an hour and a half?" Because most of my Yapping Yankees episodes are between like an hour and an hour 40. Like even some of them, like playoff episodes, when so much was going on, some of them crept closer to 2 hours. And some people are like, "How do you talk to yourself for that long?" It's not hard when you love the subject so much. It's not that
Mhm.
hard. It's so much fun to do. And when it comes to releasing your own content and other people enjoying it, when you're promoting it on social media and you see some people being so excited about it, it makes it that much more fun and easy to do. So
Mhm.
if you love it, you can talk for as long as you want.
You're exactly right. As long as you love the subject and you're passionate about it, talk as long as you want. Like there's no time limit on how long the episodes are and how much you want to talk about it. It's like you can literally last for like 5 hours. It doesn't matter how long you take it.
Yeah, once it's your own content, it's all yours for the taking. That's why I've had some people, like especially the station that I work at right now for my actual job. They're like, "Oh, would you consider putting the show on the station?" I'm like, "Absolutely not." Because not only do I not really like anymore, like partnering my show with other people or other businesses, what have you, because I've done that before and it hasn't turned out great. But also, when it comes to radio, you're more strict with time. Everything's
Mhm.
time oriented in radio. It's all it's about mostly. So I don't want to be restricted to time. I want to be able to have as much fun as I want to have and as much time as I want to have. And a good way to do that is the podcasting world. And as you said, you even
Mhm.
know what it's like too. It's just a great
Mhm.
avenue. It really is.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And like for the podcast, do you just interview players or you just cover those games and stuff like that?
I basically talk about what happened in the last week, or if I happen to take off on us, because it's every Sunday. So there are weekends throughout the season where either I'll be busy, which doesn't happen very often because I'm all about work, but like there'll be other days, like on holidays I'll take off, like Easter I took off, I'll take off for Mother and Father's Day, the Sunday holidays.
Mhm.
So on those weekends that I take off, the following weekend I'll do sort of like a catch up episode because I'll have missed a week, so it's like 2 weeks now. In that case, the episodes in those cases will probably be a little bit longer, obviously. But It's usually just talking about the biggest talking points from the past week or two, depending on, when was the last time we spoke. And I'll recap the games. Maybe I'll even like incorporate some humor. Like I'll put sound effects in the show. I just did that in the episode I put out last night. In the last week or so, the Yankee offense has been pitiful. So I made a joke at the beginning of the episode by making it sound like I was smelling something horrible. And then I said, "Oh, that's right. It's the Yankee offense." And I put a boom sound effect in there. It's stupid stuff like that sometimes. But so a mix of that, recapping, and then I'll also do a social media segment at the end of the show that I'll usually post on Twitter. I used to do Twitter and Instagram, but my following on Twitter is much bigger, so I do it on there. Where I'll ask a question, whether it be an open-ended question or a poll question, or I'll open up for a Q&A, and I'll get a bunch of replies on Twitter, and I'll read them out and reply to them on the show as sort of like a fan interaction segment.
Mm-hmm.
And when you factor in all that and how much I can talk about this freaking team, you got yourself an hour and a half worth of content.
Yeah, because I'm sure like a lot of people wouldn't just want to hear you talking about the Yankees. You probably just want to do all these things besides talking about one specific team, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So it's good to like incorporate fan interaction if you can. Honestly, I just haven't had the time or the equipment yet to like incorporate having guests on. It's something that I'd like to explore in the future. But for now, also, it's like something different also from what a lot of other content creators, whether it be podcasters or just YouTubers or whatever, are doing, because they'll often have guests, and that stuff is great. And if you like that, then go for it. But I more so go for the old school, old fashioned solo sports talk show host on the radio sort of a thing with sound effects and talking about the team, even like talking about my life a little bit sometimes if something's going on. Like it's more like a, I don't know, like a comfortable, like old school approach sort of, I think. I don't know. So it's I think some people have forgotten that, like solo people doing podcasts on their own. That doesn't happen too much anymore. Like they'll have a lot of people incorporated. So I think it's a fresh reminder for people looking for maybe just a solo host talking about their favorite interests, like I'm talking about mine. So I try to make it fun, and I have a blast doing it every week.
Like you said, like there's not too many like solo podcasts. So it's like back then, like in our parents' generation or even your generation, like there's mostly more solo hosts than there's now in today's world. Like basically all the podcasts I listen to today or interviews are all basically two people at least talking or one person. So it's not too many people that actually do solo interviews like you. Basically, it's like kind of like more rare now than it was like 10, 20 years ago. It was more rare.
Yeah, and listen, if that's what you like, if you like having more than one host, then more power. It's a skill that a lot of people don't have. And listen, if they do better because listen, it takes talent also to do a show with another person. Like chemistry is a thing. It can be absolutely abysmal if you have the wrong partner. It could turn out to be really bad. So that's its own skill set. I'm not, poo-pooing that or anything. Don't get me wrong. But it's definitely also an entirely other skill set to be able to carry a show and carry a conversation when it's just you. And I happen to value that very much.
Me and you both. And like, how do you come up with the name Yapping Yankees? Like, how did you come up with that?
So I had actually a former friend of mine. She came up with the name Yapping Yankees at first. Now, I thought that sounded like someone was throwing up. So I was like, I don't like that. Like, it's a good start when I'm brainstorming. Like, I couldn't come up with anything like off the bat, because when it comes to like creating names or titles for certain things, sometimes I'm just like I have like creative blocks. It's really weird. So I was coming up with a name, like I got nothing. So she came up with Yapping Yankees. I was like, it kind of sounds like someone's throwing up all over the Yankees. I'm not too sure about that. So I was like, talking but I was like, I can't do Talking Yanks, nor do I want to, because that's John Boy and them. I don't want to step on their toes or anything, and they're much bigger than me anyway. It's not even a conversation. So I was like, can't be Talking Yanks. But I was like, another word for it, another word starting with the letter Y instead of yakking could be yapping. I'm like, kind of sounds like an old school sort of like a Yapping Yankees. It sounds like a Yankees show that would exist in like the 1940s. Like it's like I don't know. So like I was like, it could be cool. I was like, Yapping Yankees. I just sort of like rolled off the tongue. I was like, I'm gonna do it. So I kind of took like half of my friend's idea and just tweaked it a little bit, and then came up with the Yapping Yankees. That's kind of how it went.
That's actually not a bad process. Like for me, it would take me like years. That's like it took me years to come up with my own podcast name. Like I don't know how I come up with something else, honestly.
It's not easy coming up with names, I guess, because like that's the first thing that people are going to look at, and that's the first thing they're going to hear when they're looking for another show or they see you promoting and be like, oh, that's the name of the show. So like you want it to be like catchy or cool or something that catches someone's attention. Like so it was definitely helpful that my friend got the ball rolling with that, with the Yakking Yankees thing, and I just had to tweak it a little bit, and that made it come about. If she didn't say anything, I'm not sure I would have ever come up with anything close to that. So she definitely deserves a lot of the credit. But after a brief tweak, that's all it took.
And like as we're about like 2 months into the MLB season and 2023 season, like what do you kind of expect like from the start of the season and up to the rest of the season? As we're all like 2 months into the season, like what do you expect from the Yankees to do to the rest of the season?
I definitely expect them to get some guys back from injury because it's just about the same thing every single year when it comes to the Yankees with injuries. It's always the same deal. It's you want to talk about history repeating itself. You never seen anything like it. This team with the injuries is unbelievable, especially my boy Stanton. He goes down to injury again. He's one of my favorite players
Mhm.
because when he's on the field, there aren't many better. But that's the key when he's on the field. And unfortunately, in his 5-6 years with the Yankees since he came over here in 2018, he has not spent a lot of time on the field. As a matter of fact, almost half his time on the Yankees has been spent on the injured list, and that stinks. That's
Mhm.
that's a big loss for the team. So when you have guys like that, when you have guys like Bader out, who's coming back in a couple of weeks, thank God. Um, and just so many bullpen guys out, and the bullpen's experienced some difficulty to start the season here now and again. Now the bats have gone quiet, and you look at they didn't really add many bats in the offseason. They bought up Volpe from the minors. Peraza's back up, thankfully, and DJ's back healthy. But other than that, when you have the regulars back in the lineup, it's a lot of the same names that you had last year with that team that failed in the playoffs again.
Mhm.
And when I was younger, when I saw the Yankees win the World Series in '09, that was really the one championship I could comprehend because I was alive for 98, 99, 2000, but I was a baby. So,
Mhm.
um, but when I saw them win in '09, the one thing that I never really expected the Yankees to become were playoff failures.
Mhm.
And in the last 14, 15 years or so since '09, that's kind of been what they've been clowned as. And unfortunately, there's not much we Yankee fans can say to battle back against that. So,
Mhm.
I mean, you could talk about the regular season success, and that's definitely a thing. They've had over 30 years of winning regular seasons, which is a hell of an accomplishment. Yeah. Um, but when it comes to the playoffs, hasn't gone too well the last 15 years or so since '09. So what I expect over the course of these next few months is just get guys back from injury. That should definitely help things. Um, Stop making Aaron Judge do things all on his own because this team usually has the habit of whatever Judge is doing, that's what the rest of the lineup's doing. That's a problem. The guy can't do it on its own. And as great as he is, he's not God and he can't do it all by himself. So they got to have him get some help whenever he does go into a slump like right now, because it's going to happen. He's a human being. Um, so the rest of the lineup's got to get back into it. They're going to go through the ebbs and flows like everyone else does. Um, get guys back from injuries, the main thing, and just try to go back to the key fundamentals of hitting. Yes, power is definitely important, but you gotta put the ball in play. That's the key. The last week and a half, the offense has been pitiful, and they finally lost their first series of the season this past weekend against the Blue Jays as a result of it. Because you're not going to win many games that way.
Mhm.
So so they've that the main objective though is get guys back from injury because you can make your excuses here and there, but it's a fact of the matter is that this roster right now is not what it's fully capable of because of how many guys they're missing. So when you get that, take it from there. And see what other problems arise at that point, because in a 162 game marathon, other problems are bound to arise, as I'm sure you see with your Dodgers as well.
Mhm.
So they're not off to a bad start, but you also are looking up at someone like Tampa Bay in the AL East right now, who are 19 freaking 3, and they're undefeated at home. So it's a crazy start. Lots of games left to go. So the concern is maybe mild over things like the offense, but just get guys back. That's the main thing. And it's tough with the Yankees with injuries because they give these timelines, and then a lot of the time they're out longer than what the Yankees originally intended. And injury timelines can be tough. Setbacks can happen here and there. But when the same thing happens every year, it's very frustrating. So if I had to put something at the top of the list, it's injuries. Get guys back. That's the key.
Like that's the same exact way with the Dodgers. That like during this last couple off seasons, they lose everybody. Like the last off season, they lost Justin Turner, Cody Bellinger, and all these good players that they shouldn't have lost. And in every season, there's always good players getting hurt. There's a lot of people get hurt, and there's always that one person that people rely on. And that person might be Clayton Kershaw, which isn't having a good year this year so far, or Freddie Freeman or Mookie Betts as good players. But with Aaron Judge, with the season he had last year, it's one of the best seasons, maybe the best season he's ever had in his career so far. And in this year, like he's not so far the best he was last year, as you can show with watching the Yankees. And with being a Dodger fan, a Yankee fan, like with going to the playoffs each year, basically, you after the offseason we made this year, like you think like, oh wow, we lost all these players. Like, how are we gonna live up to the expectations as we did over the last like 7 years, how many years we haven't been in the playoffs for. And we literally won the World Series in 2020, and that was amazing. But that's like that team that we had 3 years ago is not the same. We lost like 90% of the players.
Yeah, a
And
lot.
of course, we're still making the playoffs. But the key is that we're not winning the World Series. And that's the key. And with my family, they're Phillies fans, and I got to experience that with them last year, and it was not pretty. So it's like with being in the World Series and losing the World Series is two total different things than actually winning it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And unfortunately, obviously, you guys won in 2020, and I'm actually one of the few people outside of the Dodger fan base who considers that a real title, because everybody was on the same playing field. Everybody played 60 games. They played through the same playoffs. You won, you won. So that's it. It's a legitimate title as far as I'm concerned. But outside of that, I do know that unfortunately, around a lot of the baseball community, there are a lot of people still now, but especially before 2020, who were just regarding the Dodgers as playoff chokers as well. And unfortunately, since '09, the Yankees have gained a similar reputation. So
Mm-hmm.
if you've had to deal with that, then I've come to understand you in the last 14 years or so, unfortunately. But yeah, that's definitely the truth. Whether you lose guys to signings or trades, or whether it be to injury, what have you, it always complicates things, and it makes you think, like, could they do what they've done in the past if they've been more successful? Now you come into this season with less guys, whether it be injury or having lost them to another team. How are they going to fare this time? It's part of the game, and it's tough. Like, injuries are very, very difficult to deal with because you can't really help them, but you also know that if it weren't for them, your team could probably be a lot better than it is now if you're dealing with a lot
Mm-hmm.
of them. And that's a lot of what the Yankees are feeling. It stinks. It's really annoying to have to deal with year in and year out.
Exactly. And like I know of like tons of Yankee fans, like they'll be like, oh, 27 rings, or how many rings do you have to a lot of fans? But then like when was the last time they actually won a ring? Is a
Yeah, just it was
question.
14 years ago. It's been a while. That's If you want some perspective on that, I'm 26 now. When they won, I was about a month away from turning 13. I was barely a teenager. Now I'm 3.5 years off 30. So if you want a cold hard reality about how long it's been for the Yankees, there you go. And I know some other fan bases who haven't won in a much longer time probably want to smack me in the face and tell me to get over it. That's fair. But but yeah, it's true. Listen, I will never deny, nor should we as Yankee fans, the great history of this organization. But
Mm-hmm.
if you want to talk about what's going on now and what's happened lately, other than having successful seasons, which, yes, is a positive attribute, especially when it comes to the playoffs, there's not much of a leg for us to stand on objectively. And if the 27 rings is the only thing that you can call upon in a modern day argument, it's not a good look as a Yankee fan. I'm not saying you should be embarrassed or be ashamed of the Yankees' great history, because you should be proud of it. I wish I was alive to see it. I wish I could jump to a time machine and see all those guys: Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Mickey Mantle, Joe D, all of them, Yogi, all of them from back in the day. But I can't. I wasn't around for it. I could appreciate the history. But when you're talking about modern day success and things happening right now, you do kind of come off looking like a fool when you're only talking about things that happened a while back. I think it's valid to talk about championships you were alive for. I was alive for 4, but only comprehended 1. So the main thing I could talk about is '09, and I'll never forget '09. But it has been a while. They got to find their way back there. And a lot of the last 6 years has been failing against Houston in particularly. And it's very frustrating, especially after what happened after 17. You want them to get their revenge. And then last year, 2020, they get swept right before the World Series. It's not easy.
Yeah, it was like hard for me to watch Astros win the World Series last year. I can't tell you how hard it was. Even though I come from a Phillies family and I'm not a Phillies fan, and to see the Astros win, I was like, I can't watch. I'd rather the Phillies win 100 times more than Astros. As much as I hate the Astros from what they did back in 17 with the whole cheating scandal and everything, like, how can I forgive them for that? Like, they could have costed the Dodgers a championship if they didn't cheat. Like, if they cheated and all these things, like, Dodgers could have won the World Series that season if they didn't cheat.
They could have. You never know. They very well could have. But yeah, you took a double whammy from them then. If you have a Phillies family, then the Phillies lost, and also you have what they did with the Dodgers. That's tough from your perspective.
Yeah, it's very tough for my mind. Like, it
yeah,
honestly is.
you got a double whammy.
Which is not fun. To be
No.
quite honest. It's, like, from my family's perspective, it's not fun.
Yeah, no. Listen, the Astros have gained a lot of enemies, and listen, that's bound to happen when you do what they did in 17, and then also when they beat a team that you're a fan of. That's bound to happen. When you're a good team, you're going to make enemies in general, but then when you account for what came out with what happened in 17, that adds fuel to the fire for sure.
And like, even when I see Astros fans in public, whether they're wearing a shirt or a hat, I'm like, I don't know
I
how to
know,
feel
I
about
know.
that. Like, even when I see a fan, I'm like, can you go to the side a bit? Like, I don't want to be around an Astros fan. Like, as long as they're nice, then I'm good. But it's like, if you're cocky and always like, oh, we're on 17, let's go. Like, don't be around me if I go talk about 17.
Yeah,
Let's
no,
go.
no. It's just something you don't even want to talk about. And as a Yankee fan, they were doing that in the ALCS as well right before the World Series. So the Yankees were victims of that as well, unfortunately. But it's a bit of a tougher argument to make for the Yankees and their fans to make, because if the Yankees scored more runs in Houston, they still could have won games there in 17. But the issue is that the Yankees won all their games when they were at Yankee Stadium that year. One of those games where I was actually at, Game 5, when the series was tied at 2, was one of the crazier games I've ever been to. The Yankees did win that night, but then they went back to Houston, lost the last 2, and they lost in 7. So problem is that this scheme was mainly done. I think it was only done, actually. It's the only place it could have been done was in Minute Maid Park, where the Astros
Mhm.
play. And the Yankees didn't score any runs there. Their offense was dead. If they scored any runs, it was only a couple at best. So if you don't score, you're not going to win either. It definitely helped the Astros in scoring, but with how little scoring the Yankees did, it almost kind of makes it a moot point. Like, if the Yankees were scoring 6 runs, 5 runs, and the Astros just outscored them, then the Yankees definitely have an even stronger argument. Not to say that the Astros did nothing wrong. It was still wrong what they did, but it's just a tougher leg for the Yankees to stand on when you consider they didn't do any scoring of their own. So they didn't help themselves at all. And like the Astros probably would have scored anyway. They're still a good team. So if the Yankees didn't score any runs like they did, I believe it was in the last game in Game 7, the Astros probably would have put a run up anyway, and then they would have won 1-0. Like, the Yankees didn't do themselves any favors. So I can definitely blame the Astros, but I can also blame the Yankee offense for also not doing themselves any favors and possibly even trying to just conquer the scandal and just maybe try to squeeze out one win in Houston. Because of the 7 games, 4 of them were in Houston because they had home field. And the Yankees lost all 4 in Houston. And in the vast majority of the games, if not all of them, the offense was pretty pitiful.
Yeah, I just feel like
So
Yankee offense is not as good in the off season, not in off season, the postseason as they do in the regular season games, 162 games. I think
they
it's like
they
much different.
they seem to have a lot of trouble when they face some of the sport's best pitching. That's really all I can say. They do show the habits of just blowing scoring chances all season long too. A lot of the time, I shouldn't say all season long, but you do see that habit come along a lot of the time in the regular season for the Yankees in the last bunch of years. It's an old habit of theirs. The old hashtag runners in scoring position fail. So it just rears its ugly head even more when you're in the playoffs facing some of the world's best talent on the mound. It's inevitably going to happen even more then. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem they run into. And it's resulted in a lot of the same thing every year, especially last year in 22. It happened again. It's just the offense didn't do their thing. The pitching was actually pretty decent, and the offense just comes up short. They don't drive in runs when they have traffic on the bases. That's not going to win games.
And like as we kind of covered this earlier, but do you think Aaron Judge will be the same overall player as last season? If people don't know, Aaron Judge set a new home run record last year. Yeah, he had an amazing season last season, and everyone was watching it, including me. Like, do you think Aaron Judge is going to be the same overall player, or even similar to what he did last season?
I think it could definitely be similar. It's going to be tough to hit 62 home runs again. But I definitely think that he can come close to it. I definitely think it's a legitimate chance he could definitely at least hit 50 again. I don't think that's out of the question because in the 2 major seasons where he was actually totally healthy in 21 too, and he's still hitting the 40s. So anytime he's been totally healthy in any of his seasons, he has hit over 40 home runs fairly easily. And in 2 of those 3, he's hit 50 or more. So I definitely think it's not outrageous to say that if he stays healthy throughout the entirety of the season, he could definitely hit 50 again. I don't think there's any question about that. Um, but saying that he could match or even surpass last season, it's not impossible. If you do it once, you could do it again, especially if you're still in your prime like he is.
Mhm.
But that's a tough feat. But I definitely say that he could definitely come close to it. I would say he could definitely hit at least 50 home runs. But if you look at all the other stats, it was all fantastic. On base, slugging, OPS, um, even batting average was great. Home runs, RBIs, every stat across the board, any offensive stat you could think of, WRC plus, OPS plus, anything. It was the best season I've ever seen personally from anybody in my lifetime. I've been watching baseball 15 years now, since '08, and that was the best season I've ever seen from a Yankee in my life.
Mhm.
So, and I'll be impressed if anyone, even Judge himself, manages to surpass that because that's very hard.
Yeah,
he
if
he
that
he
happens, it probably will happen for a long time.
Yeah, I know. It's a season. What I kept calling it was a season for the ages. It really was. I'll be, if I have kids, I'll be telling them and my grandkids about it. How Aaron Judge hit 62 home runs and broke Maris's American League record in 2022 when I was 25 years old. It was it was just incredible. So I definitely think he could come at least close to it to answer your question. And I even think it's a possibility he could reach around that again, if not the actual numbers. But that's a little bit more doubtful. I'll say he could definitely at least hit 50 home runs again, drive in 120 plus. He's even been known to hit for average at times. Last year, he hit well over 300 and almost won the Triple Crown as a result of it, if not for Luis Ariz and the Twins. So um, I definitely think it could at least come close. Judge has it in him. He's got to stay healthy, and he's fortunately regained that reputation of being able to stay healthy after having injured seasons in 2018. Granted, that wasn't his fault. He was hit by a pitch. 19 and 20, he also had some injury problems too. But this is year 3 in a row now that knock on wood, he is he's healthy again right
Yeah.
now. But if he could keep that going, just shoot for the stars. There's no reason he can't with what he's shown he can do.
You're exactly right. And like with as for the 2023 season, like I would say Domingo Gurman things going on. Like recently he was questioned for illegal substance. Like how do you feel about that as a Yankee fan? Like how do you feel?
It was about as annoying with Herman as it was with Scherzer recently. Except Scherzer actually got a suspension out of it, which I thought was crap.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it seems like umpires and Major League Baseball officials otherwise, it seems like they don't really know what the rules are anymore, and they're sort of going on the fly. Like
Yeah.
with Herman, it was proven that he was using rosin that day, and rosin is a legal substance. And when they basically told him to wash his hands of it, and they're basically continuing to harp on him, they let him stay in the game. If he was using anything illegal, he would not have stayed in the game. So it was rosin, and they were giving him trouble over that. So that was extra annoying. Fortunately, he didn't let that get to him for the rest of his start. He still proceeded to pitch an absolute gem that day against the Twins. That was actually at that game. But like the Scherzer situation, for instance, that was also a case of rosin, and I think he said sweat as well. So when sweat and rosin goes together, it could be sticky. And when you go and wash it off after you're told, even David Cohn did this last night on Sunday Night Baseball when the Mets and Giants were on. They did like an experiment with this whole thing, and he used alcohol to wash the rosin off. And after that, his fingers were like sticking to each other. So when you're telling someone to wash it off with alcohol in that case, then that could create more stickiness as well. And the umpires and Major League Baseball officials are thinking that they're using a foreign substance when they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And that very well could have been the case. Sounds like it was the case with Scherzer. I mean, he swore up and down, even on his kids, that he was only using rosin, and that's legal.
Mm-hmm.
And but the crappy thing with Scherzer is that he got a suspension over it. Herman didn't, and he was
Mm-hmm.
able to continue his start. So I think Major League Baseball really has a lot of work to do to really tackle this gray area here and not get confused and penalize pitchers when they're not using anything illegal. Because Herman and Scherzer both were not using anything other than rosin, maybe with some sweat mixed into there, but people sweat when they play sports. It
Yeah.
happens. So, like, if that's a problem, then we're really going to have to reevaluate here because whether it just be rosin or just be something else, there's a whole thing with sunscreen years ago and then the spider tack with Cole and other pitchers. But pitchers should be able to use something, even if it is just rosin, to have even slight control of pitches. Because if they have nothing to help them out, you know how many hit by pitches you're going to see? You know how
Mm-hmm.
much risk the batters are going to be at because the pitchers are going to have that much less control over their pitches. That's dangerous. So
Mm-hmm.
they got to figure this out.
You really do, especially with the new rules that came in this season. Like it definitely needs to kind of be controlled over with, especially with the new rules, time clock, which is I'm still getting used to. Like with the whole time clock, I'm like, I don't know how to feel about this. I like have mixed feelings about it. Even all the new rules and the bigger bases and all these things. I'm like, what the heck is going on with these new rules? Like,
It was just a lot of changes from one year to the next. It was a lot, like all at once.
yeah, it's like hard to kind of adjust to all these new rules that are like, what rules coming next season that we're expecting? Like, there's always new rules coming each year. You have no idea what to expect at all.
Yeah, no, it's crazy what they keep on introducing. I don't mind the bigger bases or anything like that. I think it's definitely inspired more stolen bases, which I think is good.
Mhm.
The time clock, I'm personally someone who could not care less if a baseball game goes for 4 hours. I'll sit there and watch as long as I have to. I love baseball that much.
Mhm.
I understand not everybody's like that, whatever. But I did say from the beginning that the time clock would actually shave some time off of games because that was the true problem. How much
Mhm.
time was going in between every pitch? Because when you have that happening as much throughout the game as it has been in the past bunch of decades, that piles up and adds a lot of time in the game. So if you cut that off, you're going to cut a lot of time off. That's for sure,
Mhm.
and it has. But
Mhm.
so I don't like it because I don't care about watching a baseball game for as long as I have to. So I don't necessarily like it, but I guess I don't want the game to be changed too much. So I don't like it in that sense, but I'm not going to let it drive me insane either, you know? So it's
Mhm.
It's whatever. I don't think it's going to capture this new found audience that they're hoping to get, though. I think that people who truly just don't like baseball are just not going to like baseball, no matter what you do. And I think you have to be careful when you explore that area of trying to cater to those people and potentially alienating the people you do have who love the sport no matter what. You got to be careful with that if you're baseball.
You're exactly right. Because like if for me, I can sit with the whole baseball game for 3 hours or how long it takes. Like I can sit through it. I'd rather the game to go longer. Because like I'd rather watch more innings of baseball than go home and do nothing for the rest of the night. Like
Yeah,
I'd rather sit there and watch baseball.
a bunch of years ago, there was a Mets and Marlins game in Citi Field. Forgive me for not remembering what year exactly, but the game went 20 innings. I watched that game from beginning to end, 20 innings.
Yeah, I was literally at the Phillies and Dodgers game back in 2018. That was the season I became a Dodger fan. It lasted 18 innings, one series
yeah,
games. And I'm like,
yeah,
I stayed there the entire time till like 1 in the morning. I think I lasted. And
yeah. Listen,
I was like, I'm not leaving this game until it's over. Like, what? Like, if we stay this long, what's the point of leaving until it's over? Like,
exactly. Listen, I know not everybody can do that or even wants to do that, but that's just me. So that's why I don't care how long a baseball game goes. I don't care if it goes 4 hours. That's just me.
I honestly care less how long it takes. It could be like 5 in the morning. I'll still be there, even though I'll probably be passed out.
Yeah,
But
if you could do it,
I
if you
don't
could
care.
do it, if you could do it, why not?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And like, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know we're running out of time here, but I really appreciate you taking time and love chatting baseball with you and sports. And I really appreciate you coming on. I wish you all the best with everything.
Oh, thank you very much, Kylie. I appreciate you having me on here. It was a lot of fun. I've always loved talking sports with anybody. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.